call work.
Steve, back up. All right. All right. Planning to go at 15 right here. From the PRN studios at Charlotte Motor Speedway, this is Racer's Odds.
Side by side, Keselowski works to the inside.
The crowd is roaring. Chase Elliott is in the lead.
Harvick into 11, right on his bumper.
Now, here are Jeff Hammond, Steve Mackinnon, and Brad Gilley.
Well, we are now 4 races into the 2020 NASCAR Cup Series season, and so far we've learned a few things. We've learned that Joey Logano can make the victory lane twice in just the span of 4 races. We've learned that Team Penske as a whole has been very strong. Hendrick Motorsports is without a doubt on the upswing, and if it weren't for bad luck, there would be no luck at all for both Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr. Welcome to Racer's Odds as we head into race number 5 of 2020. This weekend, it's the 1.5-mile Atlanta Motor Speedway, which should be a very exciting one. My name is Brad Gilley, my co-host from Point Spread Weekly, Steve Mackinnon, and, of course, NASCAR 2-time series champion Jeff Hammond as well. And we are headed to a track that is described by drivers as a very abrasive racing surface. It's described by everyone in the garage as a track that they love the most. And Jeff Hammond, I'm going to start with you, crew chief. The one thing they really need to describe it as is the track where they can win. How's that going to happen?
By tire management. It's real simple, folks. This is one of those racetracks, believe it or not, as we get ready to go into this Atlanta race, everybody's looking at the number of pit stops that were made at places like Daytona, Las Vegas, California, and Phoenix, and those numbers are like 6 and 7. Well, this weekend in Atlanta, expect 9+ pit stops during the course of the day. They get 13 sets of tires, and that's by no accident because this racetrack will use every one of them. Your pit crew's got to be sharp. Your driver's got to take care of those tires. If you want to win here at Atlanta, being fast is important, but being a steady fast is more important. A long term during the course of that run, being able to stay close to the front, make it to pit road, and your pit crew not make a mistake.
And the mistakes are very important. But the other thing about pit road, if you remember the last time Jimmy Johnson won here, which is within the last 5 years,
Yep.
Chad Knaus, his crew chief at the time, short-pitted Jimmy Johnson. And I'll let you explain exactly what that was. But it was an amazing strategy that at the time had some people scratching their heads and all of a sudden people going, wow, what a move when they were in victory lane.
Well, the thing is, when you do a short pit, folks, we always try to make our tires kind of match our fuel. Let's just say you can run 90 miles on a tank of fuel. Well, you want your tires to go that far. But here at Atlanta, you don't worry about fuel. You worry about maintaining a speed that will get you ahead of the rest of your competition. And that's exactly what Chad Knaus did. By stopping like 4 or 5, 6 laps sooner than anybody else, he was able to take advantage of those new tires. And when you're out there running slow because your tires won't grip, he is cutting laps and knocking into your lead or building a lead sometimes as much as 3/4 to a second a lap. So it's all about strategy and that timing of being able to pull that trigger at the right time, and hopefully you don't get a caution flag that'll disrupt that kind of planning.
Yeah, very interesting as well. Steve Mackinnon, as we look at this racetrack and you start to handicap it, what grade do you give Atlanta Motor Speedway? I know, at least in looking in recent results, it seems like a lot of people have been able to find some pretty good repeatability.
Yeah, I would say so, Brad. The grade for Atlanta is a B. It's actually number 10 of the 24 tracks, one spot ahead of where we were last week at Phoenix. Typically here, momentum going into Atlanta carries a lot of weight. In fact, I think it's like fifth most or fifth best rating in terms of 24 tracks in the momentum scale. Practice and qualifying are still relatively important, but not like we've seen in the most recent couple races we've analyzed.
You know, when we start to look at the results, I mean, you've got a handful of drivers just in the last 5 years at this track. Both Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, average finish of 4.4. Keselowski's won 2 of the last 3 races at this track. 5.5 for Kurt Busch, 5.6 for Martin Truex Jr., 8 for Kyle Busch. I mean, it seems like there are a handful of teams that have been stepping up and stepping up quite a bit. As you get some simulation down and you start to look at, hey, who might really rise to the top? Who's showing up for you?
Yeah, you're right about that, and most of those drives you talked about have one thing in common: they drive Fords. We'll probably talk about that a little more as the show goes on here. But as you look at this week's simulation, ironically, a Toyota's on top. Kyle Busch coming off a couple good races here. He has some good momentum going. I talked about how momentum is more important. However, one of the reasons Kevin Harvick is not on top in the old way I used to do my simulations, I didn't. I had a different formula for practice, and he usually saved a little bit at happy hour here. His last 3 runs in practice have not been that great here, so I expect him to move up to the #1 spot by the end of the week.
Ah, interesting. Well, we'll see how that all plays out for sure. By the way, practice sessions on Friday. Qualifying is going to be on Saturday, right before the Gander Outdoors Truck Series race, which will be right before the NASCAR Xfinity Series race. When it comes to the truck race, this is the bounty week, or at least one of them. Kevin Harvick, back during Las Vegas race weekend, had basically put out a bounty to any Cup Series driver who could beat Kyle Busch in a Gander Outdoors Truck Series race. Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson were the first 2 to step up. John Hunter Nemechek is going to jump in on that as well. But for this weekend, it's going to be Chase Elliott and John Hunter Nemechek versus Kyle Busch. But the folks at the Westgate actually put out some odds for the Truck Series race coming up on Saturday. Can Chase Elliott win that bounty? Well, Steve Mackin and Kyle Busch is very favored in this one. He's actually at -240 in a head-to-head matchup over Chase Elliott, who is at +190 to win. Kyle Busch is actually sitting at 4-5 odds, which I guess is like the equivalent of him being at -125 to win, which is pretty insane. But before we get into all the Cup stuff, if we're going to have some fun with this Truck Series bounty, what are you thinking head-to-head of Chase Elliott versus Kyle Busch?
I'll tell you what, if I have him #1 on my Cup Series simulation, I can only imagine where he would be on the truck thing. I don't have any problems with these odds that are put out here. In fact, I think we're gonna be talking a lot about Kyle Busch this whole weekend. I think this whole truck bounty thing is gonna put a chip on his shoulder this weekend. He is gonna be probably more focused than ever.
Probably so. In terms of Kyle Busch for me, Jeff Hammond, and we'll get into the odds for the Cup Series side of things, I think I look at Kyle Busch this weekend more on the probability side in that, look, we're 4 races in, and Kyle Busch has finished third and second in the last 2 races, respectively. I feel the probability of Kyle Busch not making it to victory lane is actually, pretty low. I think he's actually going to be getting into victory lane before we know it, but I don't necessarily know that what you see from the crew chief side shows that, does it?
No, it does.
All right.
When I look at what's going on, especially starting off with the Truck Series, Kyle Busch has been known to have sweeps at racetrack, most notably Bristol. He'll come in and run a truck race, an Xfinity race, and a Cup race, and win all 3 of them in a weekend. He's one of the very few drivers, if the only driver, that's ever done it twice that I know of in the history of the sport. So this guy is not just good, he's exceptional. And right at this moment, whenever Kevin put this money up, all they did was they fed the gorilla, or I should say the grizzly bear, even more meat because he and his crew are ready to take the challenge. I think it's going to be only way you're not going to have him win this race if somebody wrecks, or if Kyle beats himself, like coming down pit road for a pit stop or something. It's going to take some kind of fluke for him to wind up losing this bounty, especially to Chase Elliott. I'm not knocking Chase's ability, but he's going to be running with a team that they are putting this team together. Kyle is running with a team that won at Vegas and has won 7 races in a row. Since every time he gets behind the wheel of the 51 truck, he goes to victory lane. Folks, I hate to say there's almost a guarantee, and Brad Gilly hates it when somebody says, give the man the trophy before we run the race, but I'm almost on the verge of defying Mr. Gilly and say, give the man the trophy. He's going to get it.
No, I don't think so. By the way, for what it's worth, that team that they put together for Chase Elliott is GMS Racing. They've been in victory lane quite a bit. All right,
Not as much as Kyle.
I understand that, but I'm just throwing it out there. It's not like Chase is in junk. All right,
No,
Chase
no,
is in
no.
good stuff.
I didn't say he was in junk. I just told you he's going up against the A team of the Gander Outdoor Truck Series.
Understood. All right, so
Motivated team.
a very motivated
You
team.
got it.
Yeah, you're right about that. All right, let's jump into the odds to win on the Cup side of things. Kyle Busch is not the favorite when it comes to what they have out at the Westgate Superbook in Las Vegas, Nevada. In fact, Kevin Harvick, a man who has had quite a bit of success at Atlanta Motor Speedway, is the favorite. He is at plus 450 to win. Joey Logano plus 600, as is Brad Keselowski, Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch plus 800. California winner Alex Bowman is sitting right now at 10-1. Steve Mackinnon, when we look at the drivers that are at least at the top, the most favored to win this race, any standouts to you? Do you think there's maybe any omissions?
Well, I think Harvick has to obviously be talked about as the favorite. He is dominated here. 518 laps led out of the 975 in the last 3 years. That's 53% of the laps he's led. Obviously, Keselowski has the 2 victories, but Harvick has been the better racer here. The last time we were at a track, what I designate similar to this one was Texas in the fall, and Harvick dominated that race and on way to victory too. So I think he's obviously the favorite, and again, I think he's going to be number one in my simulator by the end of the week. But I think Busch has to be considered. I think Chase Elliott, maybe a sleeper if at the 6-1 odds. I think even if you go a little bit further down the stretch, Kyle Larson, he's been good here. Very good run last year. Led 142 laps. So there are some omissions. I think Bowman may be a little overrated here. We'll talk about this a little bit later. I'm not sure he's a top tier driver yet to be getting the odds that these other guys are getting. So we'll see. But definitely some value on today's board.
Yeah, I would say so, and great analysis. With that being said, Jeff Hammond, a couple of names that Steve mentioned, Busch and Larson, but I'm going to go with a different Busch and say Kurt Busch instead. He's at 20-1 to win this race. Kyle Larson, who is a teammate, is sitting at 14-1. A lot of hype for Kyle Larson right now. Is it as justified as what we've seen?
I don't think so. Not when you look at the overall record, what he's had in Atlanta. It's not been a bad racetrack for him, but it's not been like an off the chart one. On the other hand, Kurt Busch has won here before. This has been a good racetrack for him since he came on the scene way back in 2000. And I just, really believe that if you're going to take these two teammates or look at them in any kind of consistent manner, the advantage has got to go to Kurt, and he had a really solid run. Last couple of weeks, a lot of people were kind of overlooking him early in the season, but I think he's got a really good hot rod, and I think this weekend he will flex his muscle, and he'll be one of the drivers that will be more or less in a sleeper mode. So don't overlook him if you're a Kurt Busch fan, that is.
All right, I want to take a look at some head-to-head matchups now because, typically I get a little more nervous when we start talking about the people who are at the top, when you start pitting the Harvicks versus the Bushes and the Logano's and the Keselowskis and the Elliots and all of that. But Steve Mackinnon right here at the top, you got Joey Logano, who's won 2 of the last 3 races on the schedule, plus 110 over Harvick minus 130. You got Brad Keselowski, who's won 2 of the last 3 races at Atlanta. He's on the plus side of a bet on Kevin Harvick, who is at minus 130. Do you see any value maybe in any one of those two, or at least some of these top matchups on the board?
After Harvick coming off a second place finish here, he looks ready to win. This is probably his best track of any. I guess I wouldn't want to step in front of that train as I look at those top odds.
That's fair. Hammond, would you be willing to step in front of the train?
No, I think what he's trying to say is it's probably correct. And the thing about Joey Logano, when you look at his overall record here, even though he's coming off of 2 wins, he's only finished second place. It's his best finish here at Atlanta. So, I mean, it's a racetrack that he has struggled at. And I think, to Steve's point, Kevin has been a factor in every race that's been run this year, and it's coming off that one last weekend. I think he is a little bit that was a bitter pill for him to have to swallow because he knew he had a better car than Joey, and he got basically beat on a restart and got out of position and never got an opportunity to recover. So I think that we're going to see Kevin be a little bit more even more aggressive than what we've seen in recent weeks. I look for him to really be up and after it this weekend. So today, what I'm saying, folks, is I believe he is, Steve's already pointed it out, he's going to be the guy that's going to be at the top of the leaderboard and the top of the favorite when it comes to our group this weekend.
Now, mind you, what we're showing you here today are the opening odds for this weekend's race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. After practice, after qualifying, these odds will be updated and things will move. But while we're still on the topic of matchups, Steve, let me ask you, is there anything else out there that maybe you might see some at least early value? You got, say Ryan Blaney and Martin Truex Jr. are actually in a matchup. Two of the guys with the worst luck this year. Maybe even a Blaney and a Bowman, or a Denny Hamlin and a Kurt Busch. I mean, I know they're pretty much even at -110, but anything that jumps out at you right now on the matchups, or are you going to wait?
Well, it's actually interesting you brought up that Kurt Busch and Denny Hamlin. That is actually one I had my eye on, and I'm going to go along with what Jeff Hammond was saying about the ability of Kurt Busch this weekend. He was actually 9th in Texas at Fall. That was his best before California this year. That was his best race in any of the last 15. Had the best car that for Ganassi of any race during the playoffs. I think this is a good spot for him. I don't like what I've seen from Hamlin. His average running position this year has been 17th.
Ooh.
Since that even includes the Daytona 500 win.
Wow.
He's just not been a top level car. I think he's a little overpriced at this point in the season. I imagine he'll hit a hot streak at some point. But right now, I like Kurt Busch in that matchup with Hamlin.
All right, how about you, Hammond? When you see what you've seen performance-wise on the racetrack, is there any direction you might lean toward?
Well, I think that we don't need to overlook, Jimmy Johnson, in my opinion, right now. He has won 2 races here in the last 5, and I think this has been a good racetrack for him his entire career. And I'm kind of like looking at, even though William Byron has been better than a year ago, he's still not been what I consider the best Hendrick car in the field right at the moment. So I think that Jimmy Johnson has got a real good chance right now in a head-to-head battle to beat this young man and take him basically let the professor teach the student.
When we come back, actually, I want to ask you sort of a why question on how Jimmy Johnson, or what it might be for Jimmy Johnson that could make him good this weekend as well. We're also going to give you our picks of a week and give you an update as to where we are with our running tally as a group. We're doing pretty good so far in 2020, so you might want to take some advice from that. We'll also look at group matchups. We're going to look at manufacturer prop bets and much more as Racers Odds continues right after this.
I love how we embrace the men and women of the military that are with us today, and how we honor and respect those ones that have passed.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
This is a big event. This is a crown jewel that has tradition and history that surrounds it, and you feel that electricity.
I know we're racing tonight, but we're racing for them, for what they've done for us.
The Coca-Cola 600 Memorial Day weekend.
Bristol Motor Speedway is about family, moments, and memories. Here, traditions are made.
Here comes Jeff Gordon to take the lead.
And history comes to life.
Here comes Earnhardt. He hits Labonte. Labonte spins in turn 2.
Witness the next chapter of the story at the best short track in the world. Join us April 5th for the 60th running of the Food City 500.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest wins in my career.
Why is that?
It's Bristol, baby.
Attention homeowners. Do you have a house that's in need of serious repairs? Do you have tenants that never seem to make their monthly payments? How about code violations, past due taxes, or maintenance costs you just can't afford? Then call my friends right now at Quick Cash Offer. They specialize in buying any home, no matter how ugly the situation. Turn that problem property into cash right now. It's just that simple. One call and you can get rid of that home headache forever. They buy the ugliest houses with instant closings, instant cash, and huge savings. Plus, there are no realtor fees, no listing fees, and no repair costs. Just cash in your hands for that painful property. They're buying a few more houses in your neighborhood this month. So take advantage of this cash offer and call Quick Cash Offer now.
800-435-0833. 800-435-0833. That's 800-435-0833.
And now back to more Racers Odds.
Welcome back. It's Atlanta Motor Speedway coming up this weekend. The Folds of Honor QuikTrip 500, where Brad Keselowski is a defending winner. My name is Brad Gilly, along with two-time championship-winning crew chief Jeff Hammond. From Point Spread Weekly, our handicapping expert Steve Makinen. And before we look at a few more odds and make our picks of the week, Jeff Hammond, we were talking about Jimmy Johnson right before the break. Now, Jimmy Johnson, we're headed to a racetrack that is very abrasive. Tire management comes into play, a racetrack where these cars are going to be slipping and sliding around all over the place. I think of a track like this, and I think Jimmy Johnson just has to have his mouth watering because this is right in his wheelhouse, right?
It really is. And that experience that we keep talking about, and I know he struggled in the last few years at Atlanta. I'm going to put a lot of that blame on that Camaro. They couldn't get the balance like they needed to, and it really gave Jimmy a fit getting that car underneath him. I think this is a different year. We're seeing Jimmy race as good as we've ever seen him race early in the season, and I think getting to Atlanta one more time will show you he can feel the race car. He knows how much those tires are going away. He'll take care of them, and that's where, like a young rookie like William Byron, he doesn't have that year after year experience on this racetrack and what these tires will do. Folks, we've been racing these tires since 2013, so they've been around for a while, and that's a reason for it. They don't blow out, they just wear out.
All right, Steve Makinen, if I'm looking at making some wagers after I see what happens on the racetrack with practice, what's the most important thing I need to look for when it comes to Atlanta, especially considering what Hammond said about just how abrasive this track is and how much those tires wear out?
Well, I don't know if you even have to wait for this weekend. I think going even back to California, where we had some pretty bad tire wear there too. I mean, you may be able to get a good feel for the teams that had control of it there as well. Texas from last year is another one that's a similar type of track. You'll get here's one of the issues as we bet early in the week here. You're going to see prices move a lot based upon what you see on the track and practice sessions qualifying. If you can get a feel for maybe how the teams are before this weekend, that's where you can get your value.
Ah, very interesting. All right, I do want to take a look at some of the group matchups real quick and our manufacturer prop before we get into making our picks of the week, just to make sure we hit that. When you start to look at some of the group matchups out there, I mean, Group A, to me, that's just tough. Harvick, Logano, Keselowski, Chase Elliott, could be anyone's game, any one of those in victory lane. Then you got Kyle Busch, Bowman, Martin Truex Jr., and Ryan Blaney. I mean, you guys are real high on Kyle Busch. Plus 230 might be the best money you could win on him all weekend. I don't know. What do you think?
If you ask me, this is another tough one. I mean, Kyle Busch is the interesting one. I want to hear what Jeff has to say on this too. Is Martin Truex? What is going on with that team this year? Is this a crew chief change coming into play here? Is the reason he's just something's happening to him every week? Please explain what's happening there.
Right now, he's just we look at it in our world as being snake bit because the car has performed well. They've had some moments, and they should have been in position to win some races right now. Last couple of races, they've had to start in the back because of issues, and he drives it right to the front and puts the car in contention. The other day at Phoenix, he gets bumped in the back end by Eric Almirola, and it turns him in the outside wall. Otherwise, I think the 19 is a factor at the end of the race that day. We saw how good Kyle Busch was. He put some pressure on Kevin Harvick along with Joey Logano. I think Martin was even better than Kyle. So we'll never know that because he hasn't been able to get to that closing point a lot of times just because of bad luck as much as anything. I think there's still some adjustment period going on with the crew chief. I'm not discounting that, but I see that Martin is still doing his job and getting that 19 to the front.
Hey, the manufacturer prop, by the way, this week, if we're taking manufacturer over manufacturer, Ford is the most favored. Ford is sitting there at plus 120, Chevy at plus 160. But, Steve, Toyota's at plus 350. Like, you can bet Toyota and really all of these. And if you win Toyota, you win no matter what. I mean, man, that seems pretty lopsided to me. Or is it?
Well, it is lopsided unless you're looking at Kyle Busch. I mean, he to me seems the only one capable of winning this week. So I think that's why you're going against a bunch of Fords, and that's why your price is a little longer.
There's one other thing I want to add to this, guys. Toyota's only won at Atlanta once, back in 2013. So they have won at every other racetrack, with the exception of the Roval here at Charlotte, multiple times. So it's been a long dry spell for them at this particular racetrack. And this has always been, it's a little bit like Michigan. For whatever reason, Ford always runs well there. They've always run well here at Atlanta. This combination, whatever it is they've got figured out, they've always been a tough manufacturer when it comes to Atlanta. I don't think anything's going to be any different today. And yeah, you can take that long shot if you want to, but there's been a reason why I think that this is paying out like it is. I think those folks who set the odds know the same thing that I did. It's been 2013 since they went to Victory Lane.
By the way, when Kyle Busch won at Atlanta for the first time in a Joe Gibbs racing car, he was so dominant. I kept waiting for him to just drop the window net and hang his left arm out the window. I mean, it just looked that easy. It was incredible. But anyway, with that said, let's help you potentially win some money here this week and make our fantasy picks of the week. We will review what we had last weekend for Phoenix Raceway. 3 of the 4 of us actually won our bets. There was one who didn't, and I believe that was David Stiles, who is behind the glass here. That brought him into the red. He is at now minus 1820. Steve Makinen, congratulations to you. You actually changed your bet of the week mid-show. It paid off for you, and you've actually moved up to minus 209, which was great. Jeff Hammond had a great – Jeff Hammond, I got to give him credit. Jeff, he's the one that literally just laid it out there like anybody. He actually took Kevin Harvick over Kyle Busch, the early odds at plus 150. Harvick finished second. Kyle Busch finished third, and he won big. I'll give you a lot of credit for that. That was pretty big. I took Kevin Harvick in a much safer bet over Martin Truex Jr. at plus 130. But with that being said, I'm on a pretty good winning streak right here, and I am plus 520 so far for the season. But the most important thing, and Steve Makinen, you probably can describe this best, this isn't about going with one of us. This is about going with all of us, because as a collective, as you can see, this season we're up $552.70. So, Steve, give us another hint. Give us some ideas on betting strategy.
Well, hopefully not even just following our own best bets, if you will, but using some of the analysis and such that we're providing here to learn the foundations for your own winning wagers. There's obviously, we have only a certain amount of time here to touch. I could bet probably 10 of these bets by just what I analyzed in the last 2 hours, but we'll see what happens. I mean, if you bet enough good, solid foundational wagers, this is an investment. You should profit.
Yeah, and thank you very much. Great description. By the way, don't forget, at racersodds.com, you can not only watch this show, we have it on demand. It goes up every Tuesday afternoon. We also do daily updates as well with our Racers Odds Today updates. We do post every single one of these odds at racersodds.com, and we update them as the race weekend goes on. So make sure you bookmark that on your web browser and go check it out quite frequently. All right, well, let's get into it, gentlemen. Let's make our picks of the week. I know this is like Steve Makinen's least favorite part of the show, because this is just not the way he bets on one pick. But remember, we're betting as a collective here. We're betting as a group. So, Steve, you got a win last week. I'm going to give the floor to you and let you go first. How about that?
Okay. Hey, I have a conservative play and I have a roll the dice play. Which one should I do?
Oh, roll the dice. I mean, it's your money. I'm just saying. It's play.
Well,
mode,
hey, now, wait
actually.
a minute. We're talking about we're working as a group. Throw it out there, and if we don't think it's a good move, we will help you change your mind back. Okay, how about that?
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at the team, the SHR team this week, and I see one in Group B that I think could have some potential here. We talked about this before the race. I asked about rookie performance.
Mm-hmm.
I have Cole Custer on my mind this week. He's been pretty good, coming off a 9th at Phoenix. Daniel Suarez was very good here last year in the 41. And he also had a very good run at Texas in November. I think this is a good spot for this car. I think as long as Custer is comfortable with this track, I think there's some good value at plus 265 in B.
I like that. So Cole Custer over Ross Chastain, Christopher Bell, and Chris Buescher. So we go from the guy who won last week in his bet to the guy who lost last week in his bet. And that will be going behind the glass, our technical operator, David Stiles. What are you looking at, David?
Well, I'm going to go with Kyle Larson. He's not running the McDonald's scheme this weekend. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go research it. McDonald's has only won like twice when they're on a car. And back to, was it Jimmy Spencer the last time McDonald's won?
Big win, by the way.
Yeah, big win for him. But I'm going to pick Kyle Larson over Ryan Blaney. Kyle Larson led 142 laps at Atlanta last year, and the reason he didn't win the race is that he had a late speeding on pit road exiting penalty at like lap 223 and just got back behind, and he couldn't come back from that. So I think if anything bad is going to happen, it's going to happen to Blaney and not happen to Larson. So.
All right. We'll take that. By the way, Jeff Hammond's little icon picture was last year's Coca-Cola 600 Smoky Eunuch Award recipient. So we'll let you go ahead and go next.
Well, thank you. Hey. And I like your Group E pick, Steve. I do. I think that's pretty, heads up right there. Christopher Bell struggled. Chris Buescher's been, up and down. And with Ross Chastain, I think sometimes he gets so aggressive, he gets himself in trouble. I think Cole is due. I think that'll be a good bet. But I'm also going to go with a group bet this weekend, and I'm going to go with Group D. And going back and doing a little bit of research, Matt DiBenedetto, best finish was 26th at Atlanta. Eric Almirola, his best finish has been 8th. Tyler Reddick has no experience in a cup car at this racetrack, even though I think he's phenomenal. I just think he doesn't yet understand tire wear to the degree that he's going to run into this weekend at this particular racetrack for 500 miles. And so I'm going to wind up going with the veteran. Clint Boyer, 2 straight top 5 finishes at Atlanta, coming off a top finish at Phoenix. And I think that he's got the momentum on his side.
All right. I like that. All right. So I'm the final one. I'm also taking a group matchup, and I'm taking a guy who is also at plus 280. I just think there is so much value here against William Byron, Denny Hamlin, and Kyle Larson. Kurt Busch, plus 280. Kurt Busch, the last 4 races at Atlanta Motor Speedway with an average finish of 5.5. He just simply runs well here, and I think plus 280 is just an insane number to be able to go out there and lay some money on. We'll see how it pans out for sure. Well, gentlemen, we're running up to the close of our show. It's been great talking to you this week. Next week, we talk about Homestead Miami Speedway. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Kyle Larson talk when we get there. But wish you both the best. Make sure you follow Steve on Twitter, follow Jeff on Twitter. You can follow our show at Racers Odds as well. And don't forget to check out the website daily, racersodds.com. Happy betting for Atlanta.